Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Bullshit. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie Snyder, and I am a high performance mentor. Through my unique blend of strategy, mindset, and intuition, I help men and women to cut through the BS in order to create the life and business they desire. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, my hair is very large right now. I was going to try to record this video with my hair up in a bun, and that just didn't, I just wasn't loving it, but now it's very, very large, so you're just going to have to deal with the size of it right now. I went for a run this morning, and the humidity is probably in the 80 percentile, as it usually is in Virginia Beach, so my hair is just large and in charge. But anyways, today, I'm excited for this topic. So I really wanted to record this episode yesterday, and it was just time was not my friend yesterday. I don't usually like to say that, but there was so much out of my control yesterday that I said, you know what, we'll just do it as a clean slate first thing Wednesday morning instead of Tuesday, and we'll get into this. So today we're going to talk about radical honesty and why we avoid it, right? And so I was thinking about this the other day because it was brought up actually in the church sermon that I went to on Sunday. And the idea that we know what to do, but we don't do it. Or, and something that was interesting that he said was, we're the only one who knows all of the lies we've ever told. And I thought, that is so interesting. Like, I've never heard it phrased that way, but it's absolutely true. And what I was reflecting on was when I get started working with people or when I have conversations with people, a lot of them are in denial of some sort, right? They don't want to look at what is currently going on because then it feels true. And we're going to dive into that. So just because you maybe don't have a lot of money right now, maybe you're broke right now. Maybe you have extra weight. Maybe your business isn't where you want it to be right now. Just because it's true right now doesn't mean it's the truth. So let me say that again. Just because it is true right now in this moment doesn't mean that it is the truth, right? So there have been times where there has been negative dollars in my bank account, and that was the truth in the moment. But it was true in the moment. It wasn't the truth overall, right? Because I know I'm going to make a lot of money. I don't know how per se right now, but I know that at some point there's going to be a plethora of money in my bank account. There is some money in my bank account right now, but at that moment when I had negative dollars in my bank account, it felt really, really, really true that I was broke. And that is why these affirmations don't work, because it feels like you're lying to yourself, right? So that's why if you have negative dollars in your bank account and you tell yourself you're wealthy, your mind is like, but it's not true. Currently, we have $0 in our bank account, so we don't believe that. And this is why I think so many people avoid the radical honesty, because they don't want to admit where they are. There may be some shame and some guilt associated with where you are currently. Maybe you feel like you should be so much farther along because all of your friends and family are X, Y, and Z, and you're not, you haven't figured it all out yet, right? That's okay. But the first step here is to saying, okay, this is where I am currently. This is true right now, but it's not the truth, right? And it kind of takes the sting away from looking at the thing, right? Because just because you avoid it doesn't mean it's not there. Just because you avoid stepping on the scale doesn't mean that you lose the weight or you don't gain weight, right? Just because you avoid looking at your bank account doesn't mean that your money's going to increase or decrease, right? Just because you avoid the thing doesn't mean it's going to change. It's not going to change on its own unless you decide to change it, right? And that's the power of this. So really being able to say, okay, hey, here's where I am currently. And this is what I talk a lot about when it comes to that roadmap analogy, traveling across country. This is part of that. This is saying, okay, hey, I'm in Florida and that's true right now, but I want to get to California. Cool. let's get you to California, but so proud of you for saying you're in Florida right now. Because if you think that you should be in Massachusetts, but you're actually in Florida, it's going to take a lot longer for us to get you to California than it is if you just say, hey, here's where I am. And so I do require radical honesty from my clients when I work with them. I want to know exactly where you are, what it feels like, and what comes up for you. That way we can begin to move forward. It is true in the moment. It doesn't mean it's the truth, right? I'm currently in Virginia. That's true, right? But in a couple of weeks, I'll be in Massachusetts, and that will be true then. But it's not the truth, right? And so when we start to look at what is the truth, what is the overarching truth of things, we can pull away all these little lies that we tell ourselves, essentially, right? So again, just because you avoid the bank account doesn't mean it's going to get any better or any worse, right? Either way. But you've got to look at it and say, okay, here's where it is, here's where I am, here's my awareness in it, and then let's move forward. But so many of us avoid this because we have this guilt and this shame around where we are currently. And there's, I guess the easiest way that I've kind of moved past it, right? Because yes, it can be filled with guilt and shame and all these other things. But then I look at myself and I go, you know what? I learned things that got me here, and I learned things that didn't work that got me here. And so if I change the things that I'm doing, change who I am at the beginning, right? Change who I'm being, because that changes what you do, then you can begin to shift that story, right? And so I remember, I actually joked with my brother about this when I finally got sick and tired of not having a bunch of money in my bank account. I just got really honest with myself. I said, okay, to be honest, like real honesty was I didn't know where I was spending all of this money every month. I was just paying for things, hoping that there was enough money for bills and groceries at the end of the month, that kind of thing, right? And when I stopped and said, okay, let me see where the money's actually going, without any judgment, right? And that was the thing, right? Like I pulled aside all of the judgment and I was like, hey, you know what? There's no judgment here, right? Like my children are yelling in the background. They're negotiating with each other. This is what's happening. This is my life right now. It's totally fine. There we go. They're playing cards and it's not going well. So anyways, so what I did was I looked at the situation without judgment, right? Because yeah, there were a lot of outside voices, inside voices that were saying, you should be better than this by now. You should be here by now. You should be there by now. And more of them were inside than outside voices, right? But there was a lot of shame and guilt associated with it. And so I said, you know what? I got to give myself some grace because you can't do better until you know better. And so even though I knew what to do, I wasn't doing it, and I had to look at that and say, why wasn't I doing it, right? And I had to look at things without the judgment. And so I spent a month just looking to see where things were going, just with curiosity, without judgment, and saying, they're really not enjoying this card game at all. They'll figure it out, right? This is life. This is summer vibes right now. Yep. So when it comes to this judgment, right? Like I moved all the judgment and I said, okay, let's just be curious. Let's just say, right? My inner child had no idea what to do. And this is what it was doing. So let's see what it is, right? And so I got really aware of where I was spending money and then said, okay, you know what? Now that I know where it's going, I can choose again. I can decide differently. And then I even took it to another level where, because the things that we do are habitual, like up to 90% of our day is habitual. And so the way that you spend money, the way that you eat, the way that you speak, all of those things are habit that we really don't give a lot of thought or intention to. And so I said, okay, so every time we got a paycheck, I said, okay, what did I usually do? What was I doing in the past? Okay, I'm going to do the opposite of that. It's literally what I told myself. I said, okay, this is what I was doing before. I'm going to do the opposite of that. And so what I was doing before was I was paying all of the bills first and then living off of what was left over. Right. And so I said, you know what, that didn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put aside money into savings first and then figure out groceries, all that stuff second, and then pay the bills. Right. And what happened was the money actually started to stretch a little bit more. It seemed to stretch, right? Because I was being more intentional with where it was going. And so it wasn't so much of a, oh my God, I don't know where it went at the end of the month kind of a thing. It was very clear to me where it was going. And I was actually paying myself first. I was saving, I was putting it aside and going, okay, cool, right? And that changed how I began to move through that relationship with money, right? And it was no longer true that I was broke, right? It was no longer true that there was negative dollars in my bank account, right? Like whatever it was. It began to shift and it began to change. And so while it is true that I'm at this financial point, it is not the truth. It is just the current moment. And it can always change. It can always unfold. It's going to get better and better, right? That's what I believe. And so I really encourage you to look at, if again, and this has been pivotal for me in so many different areas, right? Like I remember when I first got started on my personal development journey, I had to admit to the fact that I was really unhappy. I didn't want to say that I was unhappy because it made me feel like I was being ungrateful towards my husband and my family. But I had to say, you know what? Something's not working. This isn't working for me. I feel stuck. I feel unhappy. But by giving myself permission to be radically honest with myself and saying, you know what, this is not working. This just isn't for me. It allowed me to actually change it. But it wasn't until I got honest with myself that I could actually choose again and decide differently. Right? And so there is power in that honesty, right? It allows you to actually look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, here's where I am. This is true right now, but it's not the truth. And so what do I want to be the truth? Right? Look at that. But here's what it is true right now. Here I am right now in Virginia, right? Maybe I want to get to California, okay? But at least I know where I am right now and I can begin to make changes and shifts in the direction that I want to go to. Because it really is, you're just one perspective shift away from creating the life that you really want. One shift away from creating the business that you absolutely love, right? It is just a single perspective shift. And sometimes it's the simplest thing, right? I was at a networking event yesterday. I was talking to somebody just before I left, and he made a comment about life was happening to him. And I stopped him and I said, life is happening for you. And he goes, oh. He said, thank you for that reminder. I was like, you're welcome. Right? And so sometimes it's this smallest little thing, right? Another thing that I just recently changed in my own vocabulary, because we're still working on getting this in-ground pool put in, right? It's been a red tape process. It's moving, but very slowly. And I've started to respond to it as eager, right? Because for a while I was saying, you know what, we're really anxious to put the pool in. But I realized that using the word anxious refers to anxiety, which is kind of a worry-wart kind of energy for me. That's how I interpret it. And so I didn't want the pool to be associated with kind of a worrying energy. I wanted it to be an excitement energy. And so I switched the word, and when I speak to somebody, I say, hey, you know what, I know that you're moving these parts around. We're just really eager to put the pool in. And that one word shift has changed my energy around the pool, right? Because it was a lot of it was a lot of anxiety associated with it. Now it's like, this is really fun. This is eager. Like, I'm eager about it. And so just these little shifts, being honest with yourself, is going to be incredibly powerful. You may have to give yourself some space to do it, and maybe not do all the things at once, right? Like, I'm not somebody who's like, oh, let me look at all of the things at the same time. I like to, chunk them out. Let me look at this one and begin to shift this one. Okay, I notice another one. Let me begin to shift that one, right? And sometimes the shifts happen real quick, and sometimes they happen a little bit slower. But I am honest with myself about, you know what? Nope, like this doesn't feel right. This isn't sitting right. I need to say no to this until I can look at it, right? And so again, where you are is not the truth. It is simply true right now in the moment. Okay. You have the ability to respond differently to every situation that comes at you. You just have to be honest with yourself first. And that is really what opens up the floodgates and allows you to change and decide and choose who you want to be, right? Decide who you really want to be. So I am sending you so much love. I hope that you have an incredible rest of your day. And as always, be you, because the world needs more of you. Bye.